Hello there, guys. This is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and today I'm going to be discussing my July reading and my August TBR with you. Actually, today I'm just going to be discussing my July TBR, but later in the month, I update these videos throughout the month, so later in the month I will tell you my August TBR. So I'm going to be painting my nails. We have a nice dinner or a lunch to go to with my parents in a little while, so we'll see if I actually finish this before then. So without further ado, I'm not going to get through everything right now, but let me start off with I've finished 4 things in 4 books of the Bible since I last talked to you, which is crazy. Exactly what I predicted happened. Last month, I was like, oh, I'm wrapping this up a little too early. I know I'm going to finish 3 things like tomorrow. That's exactly what happened. But I was too lazy to go back and film another update. So here we are. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things to wrap up today. And I don't have time to wrap them all up. So I think we'll get through about 6 of them. So first of all, I finished the Book of Acts. So this is the history of the early church written by the same author of the Book of Luke. Luke was a physician, so he was really detailed. He was educated, well-educated, and very detailed in a lot of his descriptions, I guess we can say. So he really describes the movement of the Spirit through the early church, kind of the birth of the early church, and also how it became an international church, and how Paul's travels, and how he was eventually impeded by the Romans and imprisoned by them. So really interesting if you are a Christian to hear the history of the early church, because there's some differences, that are from our current church. I forgot until just now. I looked this up because Tony and I had discussions about this when we were reading the history of the Russian Revolution, how communist, or at least communal, the early church was, and how that's so different from how the church is now. Let me see if I can find it. But I had to look up a commentary on this because I was like, I didn't really know exactly what to say to that. I was like, yeah, I agree. It was like that. But from what I understand, it was kind of a mistake. Like, they didn't end up being able to care for everybody. The Jerusalem church ended up becoming poor and needing a gift of money from other churches because they practiced this. So it didn't work out in principle. So here's the commentary. Some of the commentary I read on this. This is from a commentary on Acts 4, 34 through 37. They distributed to each as anyone had need. Unfortunately, this generosity of the early Christians soon began to be abused. Later, the Apostle Paul taught regarding those who should be helped and how they should be helped. Paul's directions were that the early church must discern who the truly needy are, 1 Timothy 5:3. If one can work to support himself, he is not truly needy and must provide for his own needs, 2 Thessalonians 3:10 through 12, 1 Timothy 5:8, 1 Thessalonians 4:11. If a family can support a needy person, the church should not support them. 1 Timothy 5:3-4. Those who are supported by the church must make some return to the church body. 1 Timothy 5:5 and 10. It is right for the church to examine the moral conduct before giving support. 1 Timothy 5:9-13. The support of the church should be for the most basic necessities of living. 1 Timothy 6-8. So those are kind of some of the guidelines. We should be giving to the needy. We should be helping those who need it, but they have to actually be needy, and there has to be no other recourse. So yeah, I thought that was really helpful, and it can be taken advantage of if you're not careful. So we have to be wise as serpents regarding money and innocent as doves. So that's really hard to do, and sometimes you just have to say, well, I'm giving to this person, but it's between them and God. If they take advantage of this, they are bringing that curse onto themselves. and all I can do is give them the help that they need. So, okay, moving on. I also finished Second Kings, and to be honest, a lot of this was a bit of a blur. I think there was just too many names for me to really listen to on audiobook. However, originally, I did learn some things. Originally, First and Second Kings were one book, and it wasn't divided into two. And so it's the story of prophets trying to call the leadership, the kings of Israel, the people of Israel back to God and failing. There's so many kings in First and Second Kings who are evil. They worship idols. They lead the people into idolatry. And it's really corrupt and really scary. So we learn a lot about the prophets in this book and a lot about the kings in this book. And so it's the end of Elisha. It's the end of Elijah's sort of, we hear how he went to heaven and how Elisha became his successor, both of them prophets. And also after Elisha dies, we see Isaiah. And we see like a rediscovery of the law. At one point, there's a couple kings who are really, they're trying their best, to bring the country back to God. And Israel ends up having all these wars and stuff because they don't just follow God the way they should. So follow his laws and they practice idolatry. So, that's kind of Second Kings in a quick nutshell. And I think I'll save the other two books that I finished for another, my next week's wrap up because, I didn't have a chance to like look back over them so that I could talk reasonably about them. So, but let's talk about some of the books that I finished. So, these are easy to follow. Miss Buncle's book by D.E. Stevenson. I finally read this. I've been wanting to read something by D.E. Stevenson for a really long time, and I ended up reading this for Emma's Bookish Kingdom book club. This is Emma the Bookish Princess's book club, whom I just love her. So she does a book club through her Discord and through an email newsletter. It's always good to see her because she's not making so many videos anymore, although she did make one recently. But I heard about D.E. Stevenson through her. And so I've been wanting to try D.E. Stevenson for so long. So I finally did. I read Miss Buncle's book with the book club, and so I think this was written in the 30s, so it's technically a classic. Woo. And it's just so like light and fun, very Jane Austen-y in a way. But like I said, set in the 30s in England. And it's like the Chronicles of an English Village, which sounds boring, but it's really funny, it's basically about a woman who isn't able to make ends meet anymore through her current, what is she doing? I can't remember. Is she I don't remember exactly how she brings money in, but she decides, I'm going to become an author because I need the money. So she just starts writing down what's happening in her village. She writes a story about it and how she wishes it all would happen, how everything would be resolved, all of the dramas of her neighbors. And the book is it's published very quickly, and it's an instant success, and actually it really affects the town because the town recognizes themselves in the book. And so it's very it's fun. It definitely, it's kind of the thing that you worry about as an author. What if somebody recognizes that they're in my book, but also the struggle of sometimes, this isn't really in the book, but this is something I've noticed. Sometimes you're saying something as an author and it gets misunderstood and people think it's about them and it's not, and it's a mess. But anyways, in this case, she literally was just writing what she saw and how she wished things would go, and the results are really funny. So this was just a delight. I breezed through it really easily, and I would definitely recommend it if you... Sorry, just heard a loud noise. I would definitely recommend it if you want to get started on classics, but it's a little bit of a scary concept for you. This will not scare you. This is like very, very a breeze. It's a breeze. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would love to read more. It's just perfect for right now. I really need relaxing things right now, and this was exactly what I needed. So Okay, moving on, we will talk about Twelfth Night by Alexine Farrell-Fallmuth, who is actually Olivie Blake, which I didn't realize when I picked it up. I had no idea. So Olivie Blake wrote, what's it called? It's a sci-fi series, like a sci-fi romance series that kind of blew up. I remember Jen reading it and having thoughts, and it seems like the end of the series people really didn't like. But this, I think, is a standalone. And it's like a teen romance, but it's about a girl who is like a major gamer and nerd, but she's also like part of the student body at her high school, student body government at her high school, and the student body president, whom she's like, he shouldn't have won, I should have won, is a football star. And they just get on each other's nerves. They're like enemies, kind of. They really don't like each other, but the football star ends up hurting himself in a game, and so they both end up on this MMORPG, which is a massive multiplayer online role-playing game, and they end up meeting in the game, and Vi, who is the girl, she's like, oh, I don't want everybody to know that it's me, because as a woman, I always, as soon as the guys find out my gender, they don't want to do quests with me. You know, I just get mistreated if people understand that I'm a girl. So she role plays as her brother. And so this football player meets her on there, thinks it's her brother, and it's a case of mistaken identity, shall we say. It's also a retelling of the Shakespeare play Twelfth Night. So Vi, Duke Orsino, I can't remember everybody's names now, but yeah, this, I picked it up because, I mean, I couldn't resist like the cover. This is kind of a weird picture of it because it shows like this side, like game on, it says on the book, which is pretty cool. But it's not just the cover, but I didn't really like the paperback edition cover as much. It was like much less expressive. But this one's funny. It actually really fits the vibe of the book. Vi basically does have a sword at everybody's neck all the time. Like, she is really abrasive. I really didn't like her when I first started reading it, and I was extremely turned off by her. And she was like, why don't people just accept me for me? And I'm like, because you're horrible to them. Why would anybody like you when you're horrible to them? And I wanted to see more character development with her, honestly. She is, by the end, kind of just like accepted for who she is. And like, while I agree that people need that, I also think that that's not an excuse to never grow as a person. But she does have some character growth. So regardless of that complaint, and also it's just so venomous towards the male gender in particular, I still enjoyed this so much. Those criticisms aside, I just flew through this. I thought it was really funny, really well done, really incisive commentary. I mean, she has characters, like, it does feel like a bit of an echo chamber. All the good people kind of agree with a certain set of beliefs, and there's not a lot of challenge to that, but I applaud her for trying to reach out and think broadly. Like, there's a pastor character who is not a stereotype at all. He's really actually interesting, and I thought a good representation of the more intellectual branch of Christianity. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like, on audio, I just really enjoyed it, and I would definitely read more from this author, despite my criticisms. So I don't know. It's probably like, I don't know, 74, 76, 78. I don't know. So somewhere in the 70s, I would say. It's a little bit hard for me to, because the enjoyment level was so high, but there was also a lot of like, oh my gosh, eye roll moments, you know. But yeah, I really actually enjoyed this a lot. The nerd culture was fun, you know. There's like, they go to like there's like a Renaissance fair, which is what I was here for. I was like here for the Renaissance fair. I love Renaissance fairs. And then Comic-Con, there's like a Comic-Con representation, and it just makes nerd culture seem more mainstream, which is true. I mean, nerd culture has become more mainstream with teens and stuff. So yeah, really fun. Definitely would recommend it if you don't mind that it feels very echo chambery at times. If you can get past that, I think it's really enjoyable and definitely one of the better young adult books that I've picked up in recent years. So yeah. Moving on, Miss Kim Knows by Cho Nam Joo. Oh my gosh. One of my favorite Korean translated books that I have read. This is a book of short stories by the author of Kim Ji-young, born 1983. I always get it wrong. In 1982? I don't know. This was so good. So there, I mean, of course, with every short story collection, there's going to be a couple stories where you're like, huh? But even these, they weren't, huh? So much as, oh, that was okay. But then the ones that were good were so good, you know? So basically this is showing, kind of just average women perspectives, the struggles women face. It's like a very feminist novel, but not in a way that you'll find yourself being turned off by. At least I didn't. There were moments where I was like, yeah, okay. But I think in South Korea, these are very true problems that women are facing. Because it's a very ultra-capitalist society and the struggles that come with that. And it was a Confucian society, which meant men were lower than women for so long. That's no longer the case there. But kind of, it shares like the inner thoughts that women sometimes have, but are not allowed to say without being sort of judged for them. So like there's like a grandmother in here who's still working, and she's like, I don't want to watch my grandkid. I want to work. I don't want to give up my job in order to watch my grandkid. I spent a lot of my life working basically 3 jobs: mother, normal job, taking care of the house as wife. You know, I mean, she's like really burnt out on work, for example. So there's characters like that. And it's like, you don't ever hear, I don't know, grandmas aren't really allowed to complain about that, you know, in today's day and age and ever. So usually it's like, oh, grandma would love to watch the kids, of course. But grandma might have these inner thoughts if she's having to watch the kid all the time and give up her whole life to do that. So yeah, it was interesting to put yourself in the heads of these women. And I just feel bad that women in Korea have to work this hard at everything and don't have time to take like mental health breaks and vacations and things like that. Like we have it pretty good here in the US in that sense. We have a lot of vacation time and, you know, things that they might not actually have there. So because Korea considers itself a developing nation still. So they really focus on working hard, and there's a whole societal cultural push for women to do the same thing. And so child rearing gets put off and put off and put off. And it was interesting even hearing in here, even as we hear in the news all the time that Korea's birth rate is like declining so much. In this story, one of the women who has a child in her 20s is like, she feels a lot of societal pressure and familial pressure to not get married early and have kids early. Because, oh, you have so much more that you need to do with your life before you have kids, you know, but really, the 20s is when women are most fertile and have a lot of energy to take care of toddlers. And it makes sense to have kids in your 20s if you're a woman. And so there shouldn't be anything wrong with that decision. But the fact that she got pushback for it is a little bit like, if you have a husband and can have kids in your 20s, that's awesome. And you want to, and you do it. I mean, like, why would anybody argue with that? That's a great life choice, you know? So yeah, interesting. And I really liked as well that there was grandmothers represented and like just older women in general. Hearing the older woman perspective and not just the young woman perspective. That's, I think, what made this really unique for me was the older woman perspective. A lot of times stories focus on younger people because there's a lot happening in your young people's life, but there's a lot happening in older people's lives too that needs discussion. And yeah, this was just like one for the girls. So yeah, even though I had criticisms about this, I think that it was incredibly justified, you know, a lot of the messaging of the stories. And the writing itself was really well worth reading. Like I said, some of the stories were a bit hit or miss, but the writing was always, there was like maybe one story where I was really confused for a while about what was going on, but most of them were really well told. You know, the writing was really well done, and it's short, of course, because translated literature tends to be from Asian countries. Really concise, and there were some that were really funny too. Like some of the stories where I was like laughing out loud as I was reading them, and some of the humor was a bit almost off-putting at times, but it was still really funny, you know. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this, and I probably won't talk about it on the Korean translated lit live stream because I have read things that I loved even more than this, but this was really, really good, and I'm super glad I read it, and I definitely want to read her other book. Hopefully the other book won't be too preachy. I would say this one wasn't too preachy. Like, you can tell what her messages are, but you can also just enjoy the stories for the women that are represented there. The characters are really well done. Each story has a really strong concept and organizing principle, and she's just a really good writer, I would say. So yeah, I definitely want to check out more from her. Okay, moving on. That was my first K-Tripathon read. And then next we have The Stone Home by Hana Kim. So this was an audiobook that was recommended to me in my library book club that I go to locally, and it's not very often that our book club, like, other people are interested in Korea, and so I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna read this because they recommended it. But it was really grim. I already kind of know the history of Stone Home, like of this sort of story. It's also not translated from Korean. It's actually written in English originally. And it has the typical pitfalls of historical fiction. And so I ended up DNFing it around 11%. So let me just like read the description on Amazon for you because I don't want to get the history wrong. So in South Korea in the 1980s, young Eunju and her mother are homeless on the street. After being captured by the police, they're sent to live within the walls of a state-sanctioned reformatory center that claims to rehabilitate the nation's citizens, but hides a darker, more violent reality. Inspired by real events told through alternating timelines. This is actually a true thing that happened. People... and it's discussed in Hwang Sok-yong's Familiar Things a little bit. But people were... basically, South Korea was trying to clean up their image. And so people who were on the street or who weren't in like highly competitive careers and like successful by capitalism standards were put into reformatories, and they were really violent. And... It was just a horrible situation, and this story, if you want to learn more about it, I think it would do just fine. Like, it would do fine for that. But I think, for me, it was very typical historical fiction in that the characters, I really didn't connect to them. They did not come alive to me at all, and I didn't think the writing was anything special. Like, the entire focus was developing the moment in history, shall we say. But I already know about the history, so that wasn't news to me. And so I just thought it was really dull. So yeah, I think this might work really well for somebody else, but for me, it just wasn't what I was looking for. So I DNF'd it very early on, but I wouldn't necessarily say write it off. If that sounds like something you want to learn about, this book could be definitely for you. Okay, and that is it for now. I will come back with a few more updates next weekend. Take care. Bye-bye. Hello there, everybody. It is now July 13th. It's a Sunday at 10:12 a.m. Kevin and I just watched a sermon, and we're hoping that soon we can actually go back to church. I'm starting to do better, and we're hoping that this is the start of a new healthy period for me, but we'll see. But regardless, let's talk about the reading. I've been listening to the Bible a lot, just like a lot, because at night I know that that's something safe that I can listen to. And so I'm really studying in depth still John and Hebrews, and I probably will be for a while. I'm just super slow with that, and I'm okay with that. So that's why I'm listening to the Bible as well at night, is just so that I can cover some other ground other than John and Hebrews, because I do go so slow. I realized I wasn't finishing books for maybe a couple months because I was just going so slow on my deep study, and I love the deep study and I get so much out of it, but I also want to be familiarizing myself regularly with the rest of the Bible, even though I've been reading it since I was a kid. My memory, I don't remember things very well. I've also been trying to memorize things lately. I've been working on Hebrews 2 verse 1, which is about paying attention to what you've heard so that you don't forget it. And also in Matthew, I think it's chapter 15, verses 11, 18 through 19, which are about heart attitudes and how what you say comes directly out of your heart. Because I've been working on heart attitudes of impatience that result in me like swearing. That's like what I'm working on right now. Yeah, but as far as just listening to the Bible, like I said, it's fairly surface level. I'm listening to the Bible in 1 Year app, which is an English pastor and his wife. It used to be called that. Now it's called The Bible with Nikki and Pippa Gumble. And they are the creators of Alpha, which is sort of taking Europe by storm. One of my friends, Tony, who lives in the UK, has actually done Alpha. So I thought, oh, that's cool. So yeah, I love their app. And I have it right here if you guys want to see it. This is kind of what it looks like. It's this red and white one right here. It's a great app. It's really nice because it reads the word to you in the NIV commentary, or in the NIV translation, which I don't usually use. But if you're just listening, NIV is great because it's easy to listen to and understand what you're hearing, kind of like the NLT. Normally when I'm reading, I like the NASB because it makes you stop and think about the word choices a little bit. You don't just get lost in the flow and the potential meaning of it. You're like really pondering the words and what they could mean, and you have to like look up commentaries. It's just really more exact. My husband went to Bible school and he said the NASB is one of the most exact translations. It's so I like that one, even though it's a little bit less smooth reading. Like it's a little bumpy at times. You're like, okay, what does that mean? But it's pretty accurate to the original. So I like that. But I like the ESV for a more readable translation when I'm reading with my eyes. And that one's also fairly accurate, it seems like. So I've heard that. Like my pastor uses ESV and stuff. So yeah, I'm listening to the NIV Bible, like I said, and then they also have commentary. Nikki and Pippa Gumble also have a commentary. They are ministers, and I share their Instagram stuff all the time because it's like, it's just like one line, like verses or like thoughts for the day that are really refreshing, and I find them wonderful. So really love them. Follow them on Instagram if you're interested in checking them out. But yeah, I love their app because not only is it free, and not only does it read the Bible to you, but it also has commentary along with you, which can be helpful if you're just listening, because you can kind of get lost a little bit when you're listening to the Bible, because it really rewards paying great attention to it. But they will sort of summarize the meaning a lot of times in case you missed something. So I find that really helpful. So I've been going through some of the minor prophets. Obadiah and Amos are two of the things that I finished this month so far. Actually, it was towards the end of last month, but I wasn't able to wrap them up. Yeah, Amos and Obadiah, both, like I said, minor prophets who were calling Israel and the nations around Israel to repentance. And in this case, it was like, you're going to get treated like those other nations, Israel, if you act like those other nations, Israel. So I love that. I think God, like Christianity is a religion for all people. It's not just for the chosen Jewish people. It's not a white person religion. You know, it's like a whole world religion. And actually, there's probably more non-white Christians now than there are white Christians. So yeah, I really love that. The message is there. They're very universal. Like, you know, repent and follow the Lord. Because if you don't, you're going to get treated like you don't. Your actions will follow, consequences will follow your actions. So, and then we have Hosea. I also finished that one. Hosea is a prophet who God told to marry a prostitute because he wanted that to be kind of an object lesson, I guess you would call it, for Israel. Israel is called a prostitute every time they worship other gods. Like, that's the image that's used, the imagery that's used by God. He calls Israel a prostitute when they worship other gods. And so he's having Hosea marry a prostitute who then leaves him continually. And Hosea has to go find her, and he still keeps relationship with her and has children with her, even though she keeps leaving him and then coming back and leaving him. And he's like, this is going to be an object lesson for Israel. So that was it's a really interesting book, and it's fairly short. It's like 10 chapters or something. So that was really good to review. And I'm not going super deep in these books, like I said, because I'm just listening to them. But then we also have Jonah. Everybody knows the story of Jonah, the man who was told by God to go minister to the city of Nineveh, which was very evil. And Jonah was like, no. And he ran the other way and took a ship out in the ocean. And then a terrible storm came, and basically he was like, this is happening because of me. It's because the Lord is punishing this ship because I'm on it and I am disobeying the Lord. And so they throw Jonah overboard, and he gets swallowed by a giant fish. And actually, my pastor says he dies. And then he is resurrected 3 days later. It's an imagery of Christ. It's like an early type of Christ. And he's spit out back onto dry land by the fish. He washes up again. The fish spits him out. The fish spits him out, and he is resurrected. He doesn't live in the fish, but he dies and then is resurrected. So, and then guess what? He goes to Nineveh. So yeah, and then it's a really funny book, actually. In the end, he's actually really depressed. Like, he has major depression, which I hadn't heard before, but in the commentary was talking about that. The last book, he's like very upset with God. He's like, it would be better if you just let me die at this point. He has this beautiful plant that God grows for him, and then God kills the plant overnight. And then he's like, just let me die. This is so frustrating. And God's like, if you're just so frustrated over a plant that you had nothing to do with, I made the plant and then it died, and you're so frustrated that it died. Imagine how I felt about Nineveh. I created all those people. I value those people. They are my creations. They're my children. And so that's why I want you to value them and go minister to them. And so it was such a great message. I really love Jonah. It's a really funny book. Very, very short. This one's only 4 chapters. So I swept through 4 books of the Bible there. And now let's move on to some other things that I read that were not biblical. We'll do Olympus Volume 3. I'm just enjoying this series so much now that I've kind of got over the skin. I was skin shy when I started this. I think just seeing the visual aspects, it's like a very carnal kind of work, I would say. The art is. However, I think there's a lot of good stuff in it regardless. Like, one of my favorite quotes in here was, you don't have to be an adult, basically. It doesn't mean that you're an adult just to handle everything on your own. Sometimes it's okay to get help. That's part of being an adult too, and that's part of being healthy, is getting help when you need it, from friends or professionals or whatever. So I was like, yeah, exactly. And I'm just enjoying the art style so much. I'm really, it's really, really beautiful. Like I said, the colors really pop, and I feel like the expressions, particularly of Persephone, but really everybody, like Persephone, you can see every emotion on her face when she's feeling like insecure or sexy or whatever she's feeling at the time, shocked. There's a lot of it's extremely funny. Like, it's really, really amazing humor, and it's very romantic. And also, it shows how difficult the modern dating market really is. Like, it is really hard. I do not envy people who are trying to date right now, because it is toxic. It's so hard to deal with. And I just finished some drawings. I don't think I have it marked anymore because I finished them, but actually I have them on my phone. Maybe I can pull them up on here. But I posted them on Instagram because that's what I'm doing lately. I'm posting like photo dumps on Instagram of everything that I'm drawing. Yeah, here they are. I'm posting whatever characters I'm drawing from Lore Olympus on Instagram lately. And this one is somebody that the god of the underworld is dating instead of Persephone. So this is the story of Persephone in Hades. It's like a retelling of all the Greek myths. And this is the girl that Hades was with before Persephone. And I do know what happens to her long term. I don't know if the webtoon's going to do the same thing to her. But yeah, I feel like the author really values her as a character. Like, she is a total mess. What is her name even? I can't even remember at the moment. But I'm reading it like every couple days in chunks, whenever I need something new to draw. And like, look at the color work here. Like, this is Persephone. She's normally pink, but there's like a photo being taken of her, and she's like, shying away from the photo. Like, I thought that was really, really pretty, the colors. And so yeah, I'm really having a good time drawing this. And I feel like it is a good picture of how young people feel about modern life, I would say. And it's extremely funny and romantic. So yeah, and toxic. Okay. Also, I just forgot to tell you guys at the beginning, but I picked up a book and I dropped off a book. So I had a gigantic, huge, heavy hardcover copy of Les Miserables, and I traded it in for a Jean Plaidy book, The Captive Queen of Scots. I actually like reading bigger classics. I like reading bigger books in paperback or on ebook because it's just easier to hold for me. But I saw a bunch of Jean Plaidy books at the coffee shop that I go to with my mom. They have like a little free library in front of the coffee shop. So I picked up this one and traded in Les Mis. And we'll see what I think. Has anybody read Jean Plaidy? What do you guys think? I'm really enjoying Wolf Hall right now. So this is more historical fiction. I think Queen of Scots. Well, yeah, anyways. I don't know anything about European history, guys. I really don't. So I'm going to try it out. We'll see what happens. So I just wanted to do a very mini book haul. One book. Okay, moving on. I also finished Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. I mean, so many like light romantic things, I guess, is what I've been... I don't know if this is really light. It is a romantasy, but it's kind of heavy at times. So I finished the duology. Yay! Unfortunately, I really loved the first book. Except it's not for teens, even though I think it's a young adult book, and I don't think it should be. I think it should be adult. But there's not like tons and tons of sex, so I guess that's why they were like, yeah, it's fine for young adults, but there's a ton of nudity and like really situations that I wouldn't really want teens to be putting themselves into, I guess, mentally. It's really unhealthy. But I really did enjoy the first book, like everything about it, like the world building, the romance was like really interesting because the two characters have such different worldviews, and so it was really hate to love in like a really meaningful way. But this second book, I just didn't care about it. Like, I was excited in the beginning because it skips right to what I think is going to be the good stuff, but it's just so implausible. Like, the plotting in this book was super implausible, and I didn't feel like the characters got to know each other any better. Like, the worldviews weren't really like tested any further. It just wasn't, the character development wasn't brought forward in the same way as it was in the first book. I kind of wish it had been a standalone. Yeah, because the second book was a mess to me personally. Maybe I'm not the target audience, but I loved the first book, and then this one was like, I don't know. I finished it because I don't know why. I was able to get an audiobook. I guess that's why. The first book I read physically without an audiobook, which is really rare for me, or even an ebook reading to me. I didn't immersion read the first book because the audiobook wasn't available, but the audiobook was available for the second one. So I would have DNF'd the second book if there wasn't an audiobook. So because there was an audiobook, I was able to kind of blast through and finish it. I'm disappointed. I wanted to love this because I did love the first one, but unfortunately not. So basically, this is about, it's a kingdom where there were some evil witches reigning. Like, they were evil. They were bloodthirsty. And they get deposed, and the revolutionary government who overthrows the monarchy is like, it's a socialist kind of communist kind of a government, but it has the same flaws that a lot of communist governments in the real world have. And so both of the governments were incredibly flawed, but Rune is a witch, and under the revolutionary government, all witches are just murdered, like really brutally, graphically, violently. Witches are murdered. So she's like, I guess I have to be on the side of the witch queens because otherwise I'll get killed, because she's a witch. And then the guy who, he's really high up in the revolutionary government. He's a witch hunter. He was tortured by the witch queens. And so he's like, I feel like his family members were also killed, honestly. I'm trying to remember all the details now of book one, because it's been like a year since I read it. Not a whole year, maybe 8 months. But anyways, yeah, basically they're both very invested in the governments that are evil, the witch and the witch hunter. And they keep coming into contact with each other because Rune, who is the witch, is trying to save all the witches from being murdered by the revolutionary government in her country. And so they keep running into each other. And like I said, the first book is great, but I don't want to spoil what happens in the second book, so I won't review it further. But yeah, I would say if you can, just enjoy the first book like a standalone, do it. The second book, I wouldn't really recommend it, unfortunately. But maybe somebody else would have a different opinion. I don't know. Okay, moving on. Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. Okay, this one started out slow, but I loved it. So this is sci-fi horror, which I think is my type of horror. And I've loved everything that I've read from S.A. Barnes. I don't remember what I rated them all. I don't know that they're like really meaningful, like thematically, or that there's like a lot of depth. In fact, the first two that I read from her were fairly similar in a lot of ways, like different situations, but the people were really similar. This one was totally different. It was a complete departure from the other ones. Like, she reinvented the wheel in this one. Not the wheel. She reinvented the sci-fi horror novel in this book. And like I said, it started off like where I was like, okay, 3-star vibes. By the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't stop listening. I'm obsessed. It was so good. So this one got really good. So basically what's happening is there's a young political reformer who has worked on campaigns. And this is where I didn't like it as much. I didn't feel like the backstory really felt very deep to me. But I didn't understand it super well. I don't know. I was listening to it on audio. Maybe I missed some stuff. But anyway, she's an idealist, and she ends up getting into trouble when one of the campaigns she works on turns out to be not all that she thought, and very corrupt. And her parents are like on the opposite side politically from where she was. And when she realizes the truth behind the campaign she's working on, she realizes that she is in danger and runs away and hides. So she tries to hide her identity basically until things blow over and she can kind of figure out what am I going to do next? And so she's on the run. And she's running into different like planets and space stations. I don't know. She's trying to escape the political people who are chasing her down. They want to find her parents as well. I just realized I forgot to plug my eyebrows. I keep forgetting to do that. Oh well, it is what it is. And she ends up on this really creepy, what is it called? Elysian Field is what it's called. It's like kind of a museum in space for famous people who have been kept alive for like, I don't know, centuries? How long? Maybe centuries. Through, basically they're like intubated and they're kept in these, I don't know if you can see it. It's like a coffin, but it sort of keeps their bodies alive, and the computer keeps their like mental, it like, I don't know. I don't really know how the technology works, but the idea is that they're technically still alive and they're waiting for upgrades in the future to revive them and bring them back to life and resurrect them. So basically these people are searching for eternal life, and that's why they're in Elysian Fields. She is called to basically she's called to be like a caretaker of Elysian Fields, and it's super creepy. It's not open anymore. It's been deserted for like decades. Nobody comes here anymore. Or so she thinks. But that's her job, and every like 3 hours or something she has to hit like an alarm to let the custodians know, basically, or the board, let them know that things are fine here, everything's okay, etc. And yeah, there's some secrets to Elysian Fields, and it's super creepy and awesome, and I loved it. I'm definitely going to read some more Spaces. Now that I finally finished this one, I can start some other horror sci-fis that have been recommended to me by my library and by Crystal as well. So definitely, and I really want to check out, there's an Adrian Tchaikovsky book that I knew was space horror, and I'm just like I am in the mood for Adrian Tchaikovsky, so we'll see if I can get to that soon, but I'm happy that I'm finally scratching that sci-fi itch. And that is it for today. So I will come back to you probably next weekend with some more books. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next weekend. Hello there, guys. Well, it is Monday, July 21st. So I don't usually come to you. Oh yeah, by the way, taking my glasses. I don't usually come to you on a weekday, at least not at the beginning of the week. But this weekend I was not able to update, and I only had like a couple books by then, but then I finished some, so I'm really close to finishing some others too, so hopefully by the end of the week I'll have finished and I can do another final update. But let's jump into it. So first of all, let's talk about my relaxing reading that I'm doing a lot of lately. I blew through Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets again. I was reading book 7 and then I was having trouble even reading that. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and just look at the pictures while I'm listening to an audiobook. And that seems to be helping. I'm able to sleep more consistently now. I'm really hoping I can go back to actually reading right before bed, though. We'll see. We're still working on the insomnia problem, the anxiety problem. But I feel like we're making progress, and hopefully soon I can go back to actually reading. But anyways, this was lovely as always. I will always happily reread these and have the best time doing so. The illustrations are incredible, and I just feel like I should show you some. I don't know. I don't have any saved. Actually, I do have some saved that I want to draw, but I didn't have it like in the plan to show you, like Peeves. Isn't that an amazing like painting of Peeves? I thought it was fantastic. I'm sure it's not, my camera is not focusing on it, so I'm not sure how well you can see it, but Jim Kay just has such a way with these illustrations. I'm really sad that he's not going to be doing books 6 and 7 because he's incredible, but there are tons of incredible illustrators out there, and I hope that they find another one that really matches the vibe really well. And I just love the chess pieces were some of my favorites. The illustrations of the chess pieces. Sorry, that's probably really blurry, but there it is. I think you can see it now. Yeah, these are just incredible, and I highly recommend checking them out if you haven't. Get them from the library. I mean, really, check out these illustrated editions. They are so worth a reread anyways. Like, the books are always, of course, worth rereading, but these illustrated editions just take it to another whole level. So, okay, moving on. Another reread. We have The Woman Who Rides Like a Man by Tamora Pierce, which is I just love this edition of it. Wow, isn't this so pretty? So as you can guess, this is a medieval fantasy series about a woman who wants to become a knight, and it's not allowed currently in her realm, so she has to disguise herself to become a knight. And this is about her first year as a knight and the adventures that she goes on in that first year, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think I would probably say like 75%. I don't know. Like, I'm really nostalgic about them because I just had such a good time reading them as a kid. I can see that there's flaws. It's definitely like, she wrote these when she was 22. She wrote them as one book. They were separated into 4. She wrote it for adults. They were published for teenagers. Like, there's a lot of reasons why. And again, this is her debut book, and it was all written as one book. So I can see why I can acknowledge that there are problems. And it's also like an outdated form of very secular feminism. So there's problems here. But nevertheless, I enjoyed reading these so much. I just think the characters are great. They really just feel like an adventure novel, like an old-fashioned classic fantasy adventure novel. And I think it's best if you don't take it too seriously. Like, there's things that are worth discussing morally with these books. Absolutely. And we do on the live shows. We discuss the morality of these books really in depth. And I love doing that with books. But it's also just for fun. So, yeah. I'm having the best time rereading these. And I cannot wait for the next quartet because it's definitely better than these, but there's some characters from this original series in the next quartet, the Immortals Quartet. So really looking forward to moving on. In this one, there's some more magic happening as the main character becomes more comfortable with her magic. There is some foreshadowing about stuff that's going to happen in book 4. We also spend a lot of time in the desert with a kind of Bedouin Islamic-like culture. The author interview in the back, she says she's fascinated by those cultures, but they're not like a copy and paste of Islamic or Bedouin cultures. They are unique. They have their own unique magic, and I'm sure modern people reading this would say it's a white savior narrative, but I don't really care. It's old. Let's give it some grace as an older classic. And yeah, I would say probably the concern would be warranted for middle grade readers, that it might be a little, I think specifically for today's middle grade readers, today's kids are younger than ever, like developmentally. They're more protected by their parents. They don't spend time alone with their friends. They don't spend as much time with just kids as previous generations. They're not having sex as much they're not having the same social experiences of breakups and like difficult friendship moments, and they're not learning a lot of those social lessons as early. And so I think today's middle graders might be a little different than previous teenagers who might have been reading this. And this definitely takes the view of like teens are developmentally older in this series than today's teens. So I would keep that in mind. It also is written during the Middle Ages, when girls were married at like 14. So there's some stuff in here that's she, like I said, wrote it for adults, and then it was published for teens by her publisher. So yeah, there's definitely some things that I would say. I read these at 12, and I was able to differentiate my own opinion from the opinions of the author and the opinions of the characters. I was like, yeah, that's not my opinion about how to live. I don't think that's a good way to live. And I do think that the consequences of the way they live is apparent. And I just don't feel like that's the focus of the book so much. I feel like the focus is, let's go have an adventure. That's literally words from the end of book 2 that lead into this book. Let's go have an adventure. So yeah, I definitely would say these hold up for younger readers, probably teens. Today's kids would probably be better teens. Although, like I said, I read them when I was 12, and I was way more sheltered even. I was really, really sheltered, and I was fine. So, yeah, there's some adult discussions in here, but I feel like it's nothing compared to today's literature for young adults, and teens would laugh at you if you said, oh, this is too advanced for today's teenagers. They'd be like, you haven't seen my phone browsing history. You didn't hear what I heard at school today. And what's on TV, what my parents let me watch on Netflix. Like, this is nothing compared to any of that. So, yeah, I would say definitely a good one for teens, in my opinion. Even younger teens, because I feel like the older you are when you read these, the more the flaws are apparent, I would say. So it's still, like, I would say overall a 3-star series as I'm rereading them, but very nostalgic, and I'm having the best time. I love a desert fantasy. Let's be real. So, okay, moving on. One Writer's Beginnings by Eudora Welty. So this is an arc. I actually kept to my TBR and read one of my arcs from years ago. Yay, go me. I published a review of it on NetGalley and on Goodreads. Yay, go me. I actually wrote a review. So I have a review here for you guys on this. And I'm so proud of myself for actually doing it. I haven't been writing reviews at all this year. It's hard for me to find the time to post on social media now that I can't do it after work. I can't do it in the evening anymore, at least not until we get my sleep and my anxiety under control. So this is not a manual for writers, first of all. That's important to say. It's One Writer's Beginnings by Eudora Welty. It is the story of how she finds inspiration in life and memories about life in order to write. But it's not a writer's manual. Like, if you read this, you're not going to necessarily learn how to become a writer, but if you read it thoughtfully, I think you'll see what made her into a writer and what can make anybody better as a writer. So she talks in the end, she's like, yeah, I lived a very sheltered life, and I was still able to become a writer. And that's something that's echoed by a lot of, I think Flannery O'Connor said something similar, like, if you have lived to become an adult, you have enough experience to become an author already. You don't actually need any more than that. You can turn that into a story, which I found really interesting. I think that's a very kind of Southern Gothic realism type of take, because they do focus on the particular. It's not whimsical, magical, imaginative. It's just like what they experienced, but funny, you know? They find the humor and the wisdom in life, and they look at life through that lens of finding a story in the everyday details. So it's a notorious and infamously difficult question that people ask authors, what's your inspiration? And she answers that really well. She just tells about her early life and how she turned that into stories. Excuse me, sorry. My throat today. She's writing also for people who have read her stories. I've only read a couple of her stories, honestly, but if you've read some of her stories, you'll enjoy some of the behind the scenes stuff in this story about how she developed those stories. Life, memory, having an eye for the particular. That's something she recommends to writers. Having an eye to notice the gesture that conveys emotion and conveys feeling in certain people. Like sometimes there's just like a really good actor. They don't even have to say a word and you know exactly what emotion they are feeling and what emotion they are portraying. Just body language can say a lot. It speaks volumes. And so describing that, that's showing instead of telling. Instead of saying he was annoyed, describing the way his eyebrow arches and his mouth kind of puckers or whatever, I don't know. I'm not this kind of a detailed particular writer. But yeah, she answers that question about inspiration with depth and grace. Other things she says to look out for are the monologue that tells much more besides just the monologue, that reveals a lot. And I'm sure we all know people like this who it's like everything they say is like one long monologue. That can tell you a lot more than even what they're saying, and they reveal a lot more. And then the gossip and everyday lives that form the basis of scenes. So she picked up on this as a Ute. In my household, we actually don't lie, but a lot of my friends, they do. Like everybody lies to each other. And so noticing that. And then, a writer must be a discerning listener for, not to, stories. You're listening for a story, not to somebody as they tell you a story. You're making stories out of life. You're finding stories in life. So I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Probably more like really close to 75%. Honestly, it's like, did I say 75? It's close. It's probably like, I want to say like 85%, something like that, 86. I mean, it's like high. It's very close to a 5-star book for me. But I think some of the biographical details of, I think it was her dad, dragged a bit for me. But like some of the biographical details like of her mom were fascinating. Her mom was like the one-room school teacher who had to ride her horse to get to the schoolroom, and it was like her mom was like Christy, if you've heard the story of Christy. So yeah, that was really interesting hearing about her experience. And I'm so glad I finally read this. I don't know why it took me so long. I was just putting it off, I guess, because that's what I do. Okay, moving on. I would definitely recommend it if you're interested in Eudora Welty's writings. If you like a well-told sort of memoir, this one was really well told, really deftly, gracefully, with humor told. And I would definitely recommend it for if anybody who's interested in learning more about her or just who enjoys memoirs that are well told. Okay, moving on, we have Housekeeping by Marilynne Robinson. So this I read because a friend of mine gave it to me like a year ago, and I finally read it because she came and visited, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to give back Housekeeping to her, and I've been wanting to read Marilynne Robinson for a very long time. So I finally did. So Housekeeping is the story of 2 girls whose family has gone through a lot of grief, hard things, difficult things that they've had to deal with. They are, I want to say, like maybe 5, 6, 7, sometime. It's somewhere around there when they enter the story. We hear about their grandparents and mom and aunt. So all of their family and all of the trauma and how it affects them. And there's a real spotlight put on a particular character who is transient, meaning she doesn't really settle into one place. She is her lifestyle is transience. And so these girls encounter that person, and it's like a big question of like, is this person going to be able to care for the girls? That's like what carried me through this book. What's going to happen to these poor girls? Who's going to look out for them? Because everybody is like dying, committing suicide, you know, leaving them and not caring for them the way they need to be cared for. And so you worry for them developmentally as people. Are they going to be okay? Are they going to survive this? Like, what's going to happen to them? And I was worried going into this, like, because it was so beautifully written. I was like, is this going to be all the story is? Like a really beautifully written, boring story? It's not boring. From like page 3, there's already crazy, horrible things happening that are like, it's like a car accident. You can't stop watching. And there's at least 2 or 3 of those things peppered throughout. But the main one for me was I cared. I was so invested. What's going to happen to these poor girls who've already been through so much? Sorry, I keep getting distracted because my tree right outside the window is really just blowing in the wind, and it's really pretty. Maybe I'll show you. I haven't showed you guys recently. Ugh. Oh, it just kind of stopped. Well, it's still blowing a little bit, but it's been really, really blasting. The wind has been blasting it. Anyways, I just could watch this tree all day. It's like watching ocean waves when the wind goes through it. Okay, sorry. I can't see a thing. Can you see me? I don't know. Anyways, this was fabulous. I was debating between like 80 or 90, almost 100%, and I just finally decided there are no flaws. It's like 100% book, and I loved it, and I would definitely recommend it if you're interested in some really beautifully written literary fiction that is definitely not boring. It's actually older than I thought too. It's 45 years old this year, and I didn't realize it was that old, like, going into it. So I guess it's a modern classic now. It's not just literary fiction. But as I was reading it, I thought it was literary fiction about a small town in Idaho and the people who live there. You know, it's set in like, I think around the 50s in Idaho is what I remember reading. So very small town, rural, poverty is at the center of the story, and it was so good. So that's it for now. I was thinking I would finish something else and update you guys about that, but I got a phone call, and so I didn't end up finishing it. If I hadn't had a phone call, I probably would have finished it, but honestly, this was enough for one day, so I will come back to you with some more, hopefully this weekend. Bye! Okay, guys. I lied. I just had to do a little bit of work, and I didn't think I was going to actually have time to finish my next book before it was time to sign off. But with 5 minutes to spare, I actually finished the book I was reading, so I was listening to it. I just realized I didn't pull it up, though. So it's actually called The God and the Gwisin by Sophie Kim, and that's the Korean pronunciation. If you pronounce it according to like the romanized version, it's Gwisin. Gwisin is what it would be in romanized letters, but since I know Korean, it's actually Gwisin. So The God and the Gwisin by Sophie Kim. Now, I just have to say, Sophie Kim improves so much with every book that I read from her. The first book that I read from her, I was like, not a fan. I DNF'd it. The next book I only picked up because I didn't remember that it was the same author as the previous book. And I was like, I almost DNF'd it, but I got through, and I was really glad that I got to the ending because the ending was fantastic. And that was book 1 in this series, Fate's Thread. So book 1 was The God and the Gumiho. And that one I rated 3 stars because the ending was so good. Otherwise, I might have DNF'd it. I only finished it on a whim, and I was so glad that I did. But it was still only 3 stars because the characters, I really just didn't like them, didn't care about them. I don't know why I finished reading it. I think because the beginning was so good. Like, the world building in the beginning was so good that I was like, I don't want to just necessarily DNF it, because I love, clearly Sophie Kim has chops, and I want to see the world that she's created. However, I thought it was going to be like a mystery set in a fantasy world, but it was actually a romantasy. And the focus on the adult romance, I really just didn't like it. It felt like super tropey, but not in a good way. Like, it felt like it was not covering any new ground. It felt dull and formulaic, the romance of the first book. And also both of the characters I thought were so unlikable. Well, the ending saw some character development, and that's why I loved it in the first book. Well, this second book, totally new cast, except for like one character. Really is there's technically two characters, but they change so much that it's almost like an entirely new cast, honestly, because both of the returning characters were so different. They were almost like new people, and so this one, there wasn't, I don't think, as much character development as the first one, but I liked everybody a whole lot more. I was fascinated and I enjoyed it the entire way through. This was a 5-star book. This was so good. Like, wow. I can't wait to read what else Sophie Kim has up her sleeve. Like, the world building was on point. It was fascinating. So, it sort of ends where the last book picked up, except, like, really the story starts 7 years later. And yeah, wow. It was just so good, and I don't want to spoil anything. But it's set on a cruise ship that is, like, basically an underworld kind of place where you pretty much only go if you are dead or if you are a god, a Korean god. So this series illustrates the Korean mythology of gods, which I don't know anything about. For all of my knowledge about Korea, I know nothing about the mythology and fantasy of the gods. So it's all new to me, and I think that's why I love the world building so much. Like, it's fascinating. The only thing that I knew going into these was what a gumiho was, and that's what attracted me to the first book. Now, of course, I know what a kishin is because I do study Korean. It's a ghost. It's a dead person. And this was just, even though there was character development, the character development for me wasn't the impactful part of it, though. It was really like the relationship. I really loved the relationship, all the ups and downs. I was like eating it up right out of her hand. Thank you. Yum. Give me more. So good. Fantastic romantasy. I'm already like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, I'm in a book slump now. I wish I could. I might just re-listen to it. No, I only have it for one more day, so I probably won't finish it if I did try to re-listen to it. But I would love to reread this series with my eyes because I feel like there's so much more there. But there is going to be a third book in the series, so I'll probably wait until after the third book, and then I'll restart. I'm assuming it'll be a trilogy. I thought it was going to be a duology, but no, I think it's actually going to be a trilogy. So I cannot wait for book 3. I cannot wait to find out what happens. The epilogues of these books are so good. Yeah, I love this. What else can I even say? We're following I can't really say too much without spoiling it. But so in the first book, we're following the trickster god of the Korean mythology, and what's called an unruly gumiho who causes trouble by killing people and eating their livers. And we follow basically the gumiho in book 1 has a name because she's actually a serial killer, and so she has this name that people call her by. It's kind of like what's the Ripper guy? I can't remember what his name is. It's kind of like that. So she's a very unlikable person right from the start, but she starts following around this trickster god because in order to have his godly powers returned to him, he has to solve a particular murder that actually the Gumiho committed. And so she's basically following him around, the trickster god, because she wants to foil his plan of solving her murder. And so the premise was fantastic. It started off so great. And then when the focus got focused primarily on their relationship, I really lost interest, almost very close to DNFing it. I know somebody who did DNF it. The romance was just not great in the first book. But the ending, the character development, so good. And in this book, we are again following the trickster god and his brother. Now, his brother and him have history. Jen would have loved the trickster god and his brother and their dynamic. His brother, Hadi Hwanin and Sexy Sokka are their names. Sokka is the trickster god, and that's what the godly gossip sort of newspaper calls them. Hadi Hwanin and Sexy Sokka. So his brother Hwanin he's got all the power. He's the ruler. Sokka in the past rebelled against him, tried to kill him, and become king instead. Become like the ruler instead. And so that's why Sokka has lost his godly powers, and that's why he's trying to solve this mystery. So yeah, the brotherly relationship continues in a whole new and totally fun way in book 2. Everything else, though, completely different. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It's called Fate's Thread for a reason that you find out at the very end of the first book. And in this book, you see a lot more of the Fate's Thread. Like, it's on the cover, and it's so interesting. I loved it so much. Highly recommend if you are a romantasy fan, if you're a Korea fan. It is an adult romance, so there is one sex scene in this book. So keep that in mind. If that's something you can just skim through, then awesome. If it's something you enjoy, awesome. If it's something you can't tolerate one scene, then I would say skip it. But yeah. And that's all, of course, given if you can finish the first book, which I almost didn't, but I'm so glad that I did. So happy K-Tropathon. This is my... Oh, no, there was another book that I finished. I just realized. There is another book that I finished. Why didn't I talk about that? I don't remember. I better talk about that before I forgot. Oh, it's... Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I think I accidentally put it below the other... I put it below where it needed to be, and that's why I forgot about it. So let's talk about that one now, too. I'm already over my time limit, so it's fine. It is what it is. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to finish it. So, this is not the cover of the book. Okay, here's the one that I had. So this is a Kim Jong-Il production by, is it Ken Fischer? Paul Fischer. This was fantastic. So this is a nonfiction sort of... it's a memoir of a Korean filmmaker and his actress wife who have so much star power in Korea, or at least they had before all of this. They created a lot of films together while the film industry in Korea was still developing. They were pushing the limits. They were learning from the rest of the world, particularly the director. Okay, it doesn't have their names on the cover, which I'm a little bit surprised about. It only has Kim Jong-il on the cover. Okay, their names are Madam Chae, and that's the actress, and the filmmaker Shin Sang-ok. And so Madam Chae is like a really, really famous Korean actor who is actress who was more famous than her filmmaker husband. And he would cast her as like the lead in all of his movies, and they had some romantic drama. But the really fascinating thing is when Madame Che was kidnapped, her at that time ex-husband Shin and her had separated. He was like trying to find her and get her back. He was like, I know that North Korea is involved in this. Somehow North Korea kidnapped my ex-wife and I'm going to find her. And then he was kidnapped. And then they spent like 7 years in North Korea. Shin Sang-ok had to be re-educated by Kim and Kim Jong-il. So at this point in the book, after they've both been kidnapped, the focus shifts to Kim Jong-il because he was the son of the eternal supreme leader. I think supreme leader is the technical term for Kim Il-sung. Il-sung is the first one, the one who created Korea, which Grey Book by Blaine Harden is about the great leader and the fighter pilot. That's what the book is. It's about him. This book, though, is about his son, Kim Jong-il, very much so. Kim Jong-il is kind of like a party boy, playboy when he was young, but he was really into movies. And so his father put him in charge of like the cultural development of North Korea. And so North Korean film sort of had a golden age under Kim Jong-il. Because he watched like every single movie that was ever produced. It seemed like, he was such a film buff that he was the one who ordered Madame Che and whatever his name was, Shin Sang-ok. He ordered them kidnapped and brought to North Korea so that they could make fabulous films for Kim Il-sung, because Kim Il-sung was embarrassed and bored by the state of the North Korean movie industry. He's like, they're so bad. We need help. Please teach us. Like, he called Madame Che teacher because he was like, I have so much to learn from these people. Like, he revered them. And he wanted them to stay. Like, he tried to bribe them. He gave them everything that he thought that they could want, all of the money, like unlimited means of production of movies. But what they really wanted, of course, was just to go back home to South Korea to their sons and their family and have freedom again. And so the first chance they got, which was 7 years later, they, of course, escaped, and now we have this story. At the time, they made, 8 films or something for him before finally escaping. They were telling the press, no, we haven't been kidnapped. We defected to the North because here we have the freedom to make movies. Shin Sang-ok had lost the freedom to make movies in South Korea because of who was president at the time. And so that's what they were basically told they had to say unless they wanted to be re-educated again. So really, really fascinating, because in South Korea, he was believed when he lied and said, we defected here on purpose so we could make movies, because we would be more free to make movies in North Korea. So everybody in South Korea believed them when they said that. And when they finally escaped and went back to South Korea, nobody there believed when they finally changed their tune and were like, okay, well, now that we're free, we just would like to say that was all a lie. We were kidnapped and brought to the North. And that's the only reason why we stayed, is because we had no choice. It's horrible there. We would have left instantly if we could have. And in fact, keep forgetting his name, Shin Sang-ok tried. He tried to escape twice, and that's why he was re-educated. And so, nobody in South Korea believed them, unfortunately. And they kind of died in poverty and with nobody believing them in their home country. But in America, people believed people believed him. They believed the story there. So they did live in America for some time. It was like a little bit happier in that part of their lives, but they really wanted to just go home to South Korea, which they did. So yeah, really fascinating. I would definitely recommend it. If any of that sounded interesting, I would 100% recommend getting the audiobook and just listening to it. It was a wild ride, and I'm so glad that I read this. I don't know why it took me so long. I have so many of these built up that I'm excited to read. So highly recommended if you're interested in the topic. Or if you've seen, so this director also, in America directed I think it was called The Three Ninjas, like the Disney film about the three kids who like practiced martial arts. That was one of his movies. And that was sort of on the decline. Obviously, he was not producing at his best, shall we say. But that one is kind of a cult classic in America for kids. Like, my husband still enjoys watching that movie because he was like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle generation. I was more Karate Kid. That was more my thing. But I never watched Three Ninjas. But anyways, if you're curious, it's that same guy. And I'm really sad that they were not taken up on the offer of creating a film about their experience in North Korea, because nobody in America at that time was interested. They didn't care. They were like, no, that's not going to fly. Nobody's interested in that here. But guys, now we're super interested. And I wish that they had made that film because I would want to watch it. But nobody wanted to make the film for them. And then they died in infamy and squalor. Really a bummer. Wasted opportunity. But this, though, was fascinating. I'm so glad that this came out, and I really enjoyed it and would highly recommend it. Well done, Paul Fischer. He does explain his sources, how he made the decision to trust them, and why he believes it's totally legitimate, why he believes their story is totally legitimate, and why in America we generally did accept him. Like, nobody here really questioned their story, Shin's or Che's. So yeah, wow. Okay, that's another K-Tripathon read. If I'm lucky, I might get one more in there before the end of the month, but we'll see. So far, I have read several. I did download more, so we'll see what I get to before the end of the month. Thanks, guys. Bye. Hello there, guys. It is Thursday, July 24th or 23rd or something. 24th, and it's like noon 30, and I'm gonna wrap up the rest of my reading month, even though it's really early, but that's because I'm not gonna have time next weekend, and that would be too late anyways. So let's wrap up the rest of my July reading, even though we've still got, like, I don't know, 5 days left. But I don't think I'll finish. If I finish anything, it'll be like one thing. So it's cool. It's cool. Let's jump into it. So I finished reading Romans again. This is like, I don't know, it's at least my second time reading it this year. But I'm listening to the Bible in a year on audio. And so this time, I always, before filming, I just sit down and kind of review everything that I've listened to so that it's fresh. I think what really stuck out to me this time as I was reading Romans, which is Paul's magnum opus. If you want to know what Christians believe, what Protestants believe, you can just read Romans, and that'll tell you almost everything you need to know. I feel like it's like a primer for Christianity. Actually, I didn't paint my fingernails. I'm going to do that. And it's brilliant. I think definitely, if you haven't read Romans before, check it out. Like, it's definitely worthwhile. So I think what really stood out to me this time reading it was Romans 4, where it talks about how people, even in Old Testament times, which is like pre-Christ, particularly pre-crucifixion, he talks about how even they were justified by faith, even though we talk about justification by works and by the law. Actually, in the Old Testament, you know, it says Abraham, it was credited to Abraham, faith was credited to Abraham as righteousness. What verse is that in? It doesn't, I would have to look up what the reference is, but that's a verse from the Old Testament. So it makes it clear that faith is what does the heavy lifting here, not works. Works are an expression of faith. If you don't have works, at all, if you don't have fruit, then somebody might look at your life and think, do they have faith? But you can have works without actually having faith, and you're not saved by works, you're saved by faith. So that's kind of what that chapter is about. It's also hitting home. I don't know. It's always like early Romans that hits home for me, because by the end I'm like exhausted because it takes so much work to get through it. You know, it's like really like heavy. It's like a mental workout to read Romans, but it's so well worth doing and well worth studying. So this time I've also been struggling with my own like sins a lot lately. And so the chapter about Paul being like, I always do what I don't want to do, that is really hitting home for me. I'm really working on my mouth and my heart attitudes of impatience. And so that I found helpful. It's a common struggle. We all have struggles. And I'm not wearing my rings either. Oh well, it's fine. Whatever. Okay, moving on. Romans, so good. I also, well, I have it right here. I'll just share it. An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I finished this as well. I just realized I haven't actually listened to the live show yet that Kristen from Books and Jams and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand? I think that's what it is. Sorry, ladies. I haven't listened to the live show yet, so I don't have a lot of like great stuff to say about this. I honestly really wanted to DNF it, but I decided I would at least finish the first book and see how it ended. Sometimes the ending can like really make a book that I'm not thrilled with. Unfortunately, the ending just didn't really, I don't know. I just didn't care. I didn't really care about the characters. I didn't care about the world. I felt like there was a lot of fluff. Like it took 6 words to say something that should have, I don't know. It wasn't like artfully done. It's not actually as long as it looks like, because it's double spaced on Word, you know, like it doesn't look like a single spaced page. Like there's not actually that many words on the page, but still it felt too long for what it was. I don't know. This is exactly why I stayed away. I eventually got tired of reading young adult fiction. It is good for like a fun, fast read, but I don't really do fun, fast reads very often anymore, especially not if they have any element of romance, because then I can't really listen to them at night, which is the time when I really need to relax and listen to things. It just gets too exciting if there's romance. But there wasn't like a huge problem with that, because I wasn't that into it, unfortunately. But it did take me a while to finish regardless. I don't know. It's set in like a Roman Empire-ish fantasy time. And then there's like desert tribes that we don't really know very much about, but I have a feeling in future books we learn more about. And then there's basically the Spartans, and then there's like the Greek people is kind of what it's set up like. Isn't it Sparta that invaded Athens? It's kind of like Sparta versus Athens, where it's the scholars versus, what are they called? The martials. So there's a very martial militaristic civilization, and then there's a scholar civilization that are underneath them. They're like subdued by the martials. And the martials are predictably horrible. It's a school novel, so of course the school is horrible. And a lot of the story is set inside the school, and there's like a spy, and there's a romance between the spy and one of the marshals, and of course the spy is a scholar, and she has a sibling that she's motivated by. I mean, it's just like stereotypical. It's like a very, very stereotypical. There was nothing fresh or new about this. I really wanted to like it, but I just didn't care. There was a couple interesting things sprinkled throughout the book, but like you can just tell by how many flags I have, how little there was that was of interest to me. So I don't want to be mean about it, but I definitely will not be picking up the rest of the books. But I am interested in hearing what the thoughts of Krista and Sarah's Nightstand are on this book, because clearly they love it if they're hosting a readathon of it. But yeah, it's just not for me, unfortunately. Okay, moving on. I think there's only one more thing to talk about, but thankfully this one was fantastic. It was fabulous. It's gonna be a favorite of the year. It's gonna be in my favorites video. I already know. So this one is called At Dusk by Hwang Sok-yong, which is one of Crystal's K-pop Asian Discord book club. This is one of the books. The book club isn't all about Korea. However, I think this is the third Korean book that we've read this year. And I think we're reading 6 books in a year. So if you're interested in reading Korean translated literature, check it out. But we are reading from other countries too. There was like a Japanese horror book. And so anyways, Tiffany, I think, is the one who recommended this one for K-Dramathon month, which I was really glad about because Familiar Things by Hwang Sok-yong was one of my favorites, like I think 2 years ago. I adore that book. And this is Tiffany's third. I tried to read another one that Tiffany loved, her favorite by Hwang Sok-yong. And that one I had to DNF. He isn't like a happy writer. You're not going to come away feeling like happy. But the moral arguments of his work are so well crafted and dramatized and carried out by the characters that, I don't know, I'm obsessed. And I know Tiffany's obsessed, and I saw Crystal really enjoyed it too. So I think he's just really good. Like, Hwang Sok-yong is just a really, really good writer. Definitely my favorite Korean translated author. And I'm so glad there's so many that have been translated. There's so many books by him that have been translated. And I definitely can't wait to read my next one, and I'll have to pick up another one. So this one, I feel like I didn't really describe Ember and the Ashes all that well. I should do that really quick. Okay, let me break it. Sorry. So this is about a scholar girl whose family has been killed / imprisoned, depending on which member of the family we're talking about. And she ran away. And so her moral failing, I guess, is a lack of courage. And so that's like her moral failing throughout the book that she's dealing with is being courageous. I don't know. So then she decides, I have to set my brother free by joining the resistance against the marshals. And only to find out that her mom was like the most famous resistance leader, but she had no idea. And so she gets sent on a quest to learn how to break her brother out of prison. And in order to do that, she has to be a spy in the marshal school. And there she meets a marshal who doesn't want to be a marshal, and all he wants is to run away once he graduates. His plan is run away. And they kind of have a thing. So that's the story. I feel like that made it sound really boring, but I genuinely don't know why people find this interesting and fun. So if you find this interesting and fun, please tell me why so I can understand. I don't mean to be salty about it. I really just didn't care. The cover is beautiful though. So that's what that's about. At Dusk by Hwang Sok-yong. This is about a businessman, an architect, who is looking back on his life and how he escaped a poverty-stricken area of South Korea. He has lived through the development, the economic miracle of South Korea. And he kind of reflects back on his childhood and the people that were left behind, the people that fell through the cracks. And he looks at everything that he sort of sacrificed to all the things that he has valued throughout his life. In the beginning, he was more idealistic, interested in literature, actually falling in love with somebody. And then as soon as he sort of escapes his hometown, he loses track of everything in his hometown. And then his hometown sort of disappears, which happened to a lot of places in Korea. Like rural places just sort of disappeared in the countryside and everything became more urban, and it happened really fast. So Korea isn't a huge place. But because it's the miracle on the Han, the economic miracle, the countryside disappeared much more quickly there than it did in like a place like you would say America, where there's still a lot of rural area. There's a lot of land in America. Not the case in South Korea. It's a lot more metropolitan. There are still more rural, slow-paced areas. But yeah, so in 2010, around then is when this was published. And so he was in his 60s at that time. So he was growing up in like the 50s and 60s in a small town in South Korea. And he's kind of looking back with some regret about his values. And so one of the quotes about that were interesting. After a while, being ambitious means having to sift out the few values we feel like keeping and toss the rest, or twist them to suit ourselves. Even the tiny handful of values that remain just get stuffed into the attic of memory, like some old thing bought and used up long ago. What are buildings made of? In the end, money and power. They alone decide which memories will take shape and survive. And so he's kind of coming to grips with how his job in architecture resulted in destroying all the memories from his growing up years. He's like, wow, all the people and things that surrounded me when I was growing up are gone now. And so his feelings about that at the end are like really, I guess, what the book is about. And I feel like the characters in the book really carry out, like I said, the moral argument extremely, extremely well. Like you just get really attached into following them, and it's not like a soap opera. It's really, really well done. It's very emotional. I don't think I cried with this one, although I think I cried with Familiar Things. But this one I really did feel like it. It was very emotionally touching, and I think it was extremely well done. And I feel like this one is more wide-ranging. I think a lot of what Hwang Sok-yong does is criticize the economic policies of the leaders that South Korea has had, the human cost and the cultural cost to a rapid industrialization and a focus on materialism, what that does to a country, basically. That's what he is. Both books by him that I have loved, that is what they are grappling with. And they do it in such a beautiful way that I would highly recommend checking him out. I would say start here, honestly. Between Familiar Things and this one, I would say start here, and then Familiar Things is more like specifically about a policy of South Korea that he disagrees with, whereas this one is more sort of the outlook of South Korea and how grim it is if it continues in this way, pursuing materialism and capitalism and stuff. So even though obviously I actually do think that capitalism is better than the alternative economic systems out there, even though I love the idea of communism, I think it's hard to pull off without having a lot of like totalitarian sort of government policies surrounding communism. Like it's hard to separate totalitarianism and communism. It seems like it can be possible in some places. But anyway, in this case, South Korea is extremely ultra-capitalist, like intensively, like, you know how like K-pop is like regular pop on steroids? That is what their capitalism is like as well. And so I think it's really important to have voices like him who are like protest voices to kind of sharpen the edges of economic pursuit and ambition. And that's why I think a lot of these books from Korea do get translated, is because the capitalism in South Korea is so mainstream and like just it's like the accepted wisdom of the country, and it's pursued with such fervor that protest voices that kind of moderate everybody's thinking about capitalism are important, because people are just going to get burnt out if they just do nothing but work. So, I think it was fabulous, and I would love to hear a more diversity of voices that are being published from Korea. I feel like a lot of the ones that are being published are like being translated and published here because that's what's really popular right now with Western publishing companies. So I would love it if more of a diversity of voices were being published, but I feel like as far as like the sensitivity and the protest voice, I feel like this is like your best option is Hwang Sok-yong. Like definitely check him out if you're interested in hearing that side of things from South Korea. Okay, that is it for all of the things that I have finished this month. That was, I think, my favorite that I finished this month. But I definitely, there's more that I'm working on that I'm also really loving. I have another book that's going to be a favorite of the year. I already know it. So let's jump into my TBR for June, July, August. Wow, I cannot even believe the year is halfway over. It's crazy. So obviously I'm going to be reading the next Alana, I forgot to grab it, but what is it called? Lioness Rampant. That's book 4 in the Alana the Lioness series. And so that'll be for our read along. We haven't decided yet if we're going to have a live show for the fourth book, because the second and third book, it seems like we're really unpopular with some people. So we might skip the 4th live show. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm definitely still going to read the 4th book. And we'll see how my co-hosts feel about that. And I have so many other books that I wanted to read for K-Tropathon. I bought one. I think Jaina recommended White Mulberry by Rosie Kwan Easton. So I bought that one. I still didn't get to Your Republic is Calling You or The Good Son. Like, there's so many that I want to read. But I just didn't get to them all. Okay, but I probably won't start a bunch of new Korean books next month because I have other things to read. So, main one being Wolf Hall. I'm about halfway through. I'm like 45 or something % through this one. I'm obsessed. I'm like ready to buy book 2 already. So this is about Thomas Cromwell in the court of Henry VIII. And I will tell you more about it when I finish it. But it's so well written and I'm obsessed. Moving on. I've just barely started Blood of the Kings by Sung-il Kim. Kim Il-sung. Kim Sung-il. I think I said Kim Il-sung on my K-Tropathon TBR, but no, that's incorrect. This is a book that Dia recommended on our Translated Lit live show, and I was really thrilled that I could get a copy. So that's going to be probably the next thing that I finish because Wolf Hall is going to take a little longer. I've also got Foundation here, which is a book by Peter Ackroyd about British history. And I've been wanting to read this for years. My English teacher gave me the first 3 volumes. I think there might be more than that in the series. But I think this one says the history of England from its earliest beginnings to the Tudors. So I don't know if that's through the Tudors or not. So I have to do a little more research on whether it's this one that I want to read or if it's the next one that I want to read. Because I want to specifically read about Henry VIII, but it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to like learn about how England got to where it is. I have read English histories before, but I feel like this one will be a little more expansive. So hopefully we'll see what happens there. I still haven't read classics much recently, even though I've really wanted to, but now that K-Tropathon is almost over, I probably will have more time. Like I really want to read Frankenstein, reread. And then for the first time, I want to try an E.M. Forrester. I still have Howard's End here. So we'll see if I can get to that. Hopefully. I've still got Imzadi here, which I did start one day. For books like this that don't have an audiobook, it's a little bit more touch and go. It'll take me a long time to read, but hopefully I can get into it. I've still got The Great Divorce here. I've also got Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which a friend of mine gave me, and I really would like to check this out. And we've got Good Talk by Mira Jacob. So we'll see if I can get to some of those. Let's see what I've got out from... Oh, and let's actually check my August TBR. Continuing Wolf Hall. I don't know if I'll jump into the next book in Hilary Mantel's series right away or not. I have to talk to Victoria and see what she is up to. I want to start a Wives and Daughters reread because I think Tiffany is going to be reading it. So I would really like to start that because it'll take me a while. I really want to restart History of the Russian Revolution. I've been doing really well at reading at the end of my workday, reading something, like making time in the evening before I have to make dinner and stuff to actually read, like right after work, just sitting down outside in the sun, reading a book. So I have time now to read History of the Russian Revolution if I want to. I've made time. So I'm hoping I can pick that up. Instead, lately, I've been reading the Tamora Pierce read-along books because those are a little too exciting for me to read at night. Just because I love them so much. And they're so exciting and they have romances in them. But I've almost finished with that for this month. And our live show isn't until like the 8th. So I have some time on that. All I have to do is rate discussion questions, which will probably take like 3 nights. So there's that. I've also been reading The Chamber of Secrets in Korean. So I might continue with that, or I might continue reading my Korea travel guide, or I might continue reading Korean webtoons, which I've been really enjoying. I'm just not worrying too much about how much I'm understanding, even if it's only like 10 or 20%, that's okay. It's still intake of the language and it's still immersion. So working on that. What else do we have here? The Beloved Vagabond by William J. Locht. For Emma's book club, I haven't looked into how I'm going to read that yet, so we'll see if it's like available to me or not, but hopefully it is. But I also forgot, I'm in the middle of the Mystery of the Blue Train on Hoopla for Emma's book club, and I'm also reading Harry Potter book 3. I started Harry Potter book 2, and then I realized if I'm going to read this in Korean right now, I don't want to read it in English first. I want to read it in Korean first. And also the Wolf Hall on Hoopla, I like better than the Wolf Hall on Libby. I've tried them both now. I didn't realize it was a different narrator, but the one on Hoopla has a narrator that I like better. At least it's Ben Miles. I don't know. I haven't really given the other one. I don't know who the other guy is. I haven't really given him that much of a shot, but I just love this guy so much that I don't even want to try the other one. I didn't realize there was 2 of them who had narrated it. Okay, moving on. Eberhard Arnold's Selected Writings. I would love to get started on that. That's also a Hoopla book. So we'll see, because it's not something that I can have it screen read to me, and that's really hard for me. If I have to read it without the help of an audio component, that's really difficult for me. But that is Faith from Faith in Books' book club pick on her Discord, her theology book club, and I didn't read the last one with them because I was reading the Mary one, and I really want to get to this one, and she's starting it also in August, so I'm not too far behind. I think it's every 2 months or quarterly that we're reading. And then the next quarter, I think we're reading Isaiah together. So I'm really hoping to finish Hebrews before starting the deep dive into Isaiah. But Hebrews is long, so I don't know if I'll finish it all. I also have one of my friends coming over for scripture study during the week, aside from like my regular Bible study, which is doing John, which is aside from another Bible study in person that we're hoping will begin again, that I think is going to go through Acts. So I don't know when the other Bible study going through Acts is going to start, but we're almost done with John in my online Bible study. And then we're going to start Zechariah. So yeah, we'll see if I can finish Hebrews before starting Isaiah with Faith's book club. But anyways, that's a couple months out. And then we have Old Herbaceous by Reginald Arkle. So I didn't end up reading the book for Tiffany's Patreon this time in July because I have an 80s concert to go to on that day, August 2nd. And that's another reason why I've at least 2, maybe 3 doctor appointments next week. 2 of them out of town, and the 80s concert on the weekend, all on different days. So that's going to be a busy week. That's another reason why I'm filming this a little bit early. So Old Herbaceous is the next thing for Tiffany's book club. So that'll be good. That's keeping me in classics. Oh man, yeah. I really wanted to read Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. I'd love to pick up another Marilynne Robinson, but we'll see. I have some other books for Tiffany's. I forgot to grab it. Tiffany's summer book bingo, I have some other things that I'm like, okay, I want to finish this so that I can use it for book bingo. And one of those is Front Country by, gosh, I can't see. I'm so sorry. Sarah Saint Antoine. I don't know how you pronounce that exactly. I've also got, as far as books that I want to read for NetGalley reviews, I've got a couple things. There's Journey from St. Petersburg to Moscow. I don't know what the other books are. I'll figure that out as the month goes on. Okay, moving on. Other things on Libby. The Sister by Sung-Yoon Lee, which Tiffany is reading right now. And I told her, message me if you started, because I want to read it with you. And she's 86% of the way through it. So once she finishes with the audiobook, I'm going to start with that. I also, so I better show you guys. So that's The Sister right here. So that is the person who will probably take over when Kim Jong-un dies. And then we have Rising from the Ashes by Paula Yu. I'm like trying to, anyway, this was one for my K-Drapathon bingo. This is the one for 1999 prompt. And I'm learning a lot about California's sort of racist history. I didn't really realize we had that much of a racist history. I'd heard of redlining, but I'm learning more about that. I'm learning about that there was a Ku Klux Klan in California, which I didn't even know. Granted, I feel like this book is a little bit exaggerative of it. Like, it was like, oh yeah, they had the biggest, the most chapters of almost any state. But when you look at like how many members there were, California isn't even in the top 3. So anyway, I don't know. I feel like hopefully it's a good piece of journalism, but I don't know yet. I'm only 17% through, 13% through. And then this one, The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. I'm only 4% in yet, but I'm already really excited. The premise is a woman who, what is she? What do you call it? Not an architect, archaeologist, excuse me. An archaeologist who spent time in Egypt and things went like really, really badly wrong in her time in Egypt, is now working for the Met, and something from that time that went really bad in Egypt and resulted in people dying, it's now turned up at a Met exhibition like 40 years later or however long it's been. And so I'm really enjoying it just because I know the premise and I love Egypt. I just think Egypt is really fun. So Egyptian history. And then we have Korean Made Simple by Billy Go. I haven't really checked this out yet. It might be too simple. If they'd had the second volume, I think it would have been more for me. But this is like the first volume, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, I think that's everything that we need to talk about. Thanks so much for watching my long-winded videos. As always, let me know down below what you are reading, what you're enjoying, what you enjoyed the most in July, maybe what your favorite K-Drapathon book was. I would love to hear any of that. And what you're most excited about for August. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.